Lucky us, our fourth top five matchup of the season, second from the Big Ten, second including the Buckeyes. This time it's number 4 Ohio State and number 3 Penn State. And here to help us break down one of the biggest games, if not the biggest, is Dave Biddle from Bucknuts and Tyler Donahue from Lions 24/7. Let's tell you a little bit more about this matchup. We've seen it once or twice or, 40 times in this series. Ohio State leads the overall 25-14. Ohio State has won 7 straight against Penn State, 11 of the last 12. But this is just the second time they've met as top 5 opponents, and Penn State is off to a 7-0 start, their first since 2019. And in this case, they are the higher-ranked team. But Tyler, let's start with some newsy items in the quarterback situation. What do we know about Drew Aller's availability as of right now here on Wednesday? And then, of course, what's the plan if he can't go?
Yeah, we're a few hours away from getting our weekly look at Penn State practice. That should be educational for those of us who are curious what Drew Aller is actually doing on the field right now. But yeah, he came out of the halftime in a knee brace on his left side against Wisconsin. Obviously didn't play the rest of the way. And he is somebody who has really taken his game to the next level. Former 5-star recruit with Andy Kotelnicki as his offensive coordinator, up to 71% completion rate from 60% last year. He's airing the ball out with more confidence, and he's a fiery leader. I mean, he was not that last year. You looked at his composure against Ohio State and Columbus. It's not the same guy that you think would hit the field in Beaver Stadium this Saturday. But will he hit the field? That's still a question mark. James Franklin said they could take it down to the wire with that decision. Makes a lot of sense for him to put that out there, considering it puts more on the plate of Ohio State's coaches. But if he were not able to go, that then brings in Bo Pribula, who has been with this program the same amount of time as Drew Aller. They both enrolled in January 2022. And Pribula was committed to Penn State before the 5-star joined the fray. So he is a lifelong Nittany Lions fan, a kid from the state of Pennsylvania. And this means a lot to him. I mean, it's very, very clear how emotional he is about being a Nittany Lion. And that opportunity in the second half against Wisconsin went 11 of 13, 98 yards, a touchdown, led 2 lengthy touchdown drives, and really avoided any kind of disaster in a road showcase that was against a pretty raucous environment with Wisconsin leading at halftime. So Bo Pribula, the big difference here, you're going to lose a little bit of that 5-star talent from an arm perspective, but he showed he can put the ball in some tight windows against Wisconsin. It'll be tougher against this Ohio State defense. The big difference, though, is his wheels. He is one of the top athletes on this team, regardless of position. So when they line him up at quarterback, there's a lot of possibilities that Andy Kotelnicki can get into with his playbook, and that's just a lot more to consider for the Buckeyes.
Yeah, 2 very different quarterbacks, so no reason to tell Ohio State this early on in the week who to prepare for. Meanwhile, on the other side, Ohio State's only loss came on the road to a top 5 team this season. I know Autzen Stadium was brand new to them. They've been to Happy Valley once or twice. So, Dave, how are the Buckeyes planning to attack the exact same situation on Saturday?
Yeah, they know they need to handle this raucous environment far better than they did in Eugene, Oregon. And you're right, Emily. They've been there many times, but they know this is one of the toughest environments in college football. In fact, of all the games I've covered from Ohio State on the road, Penn State's always the toughest environment. That includes when Ohio State goes to Michigan or Wisconsin's got a great environment. You name it, and there's a lot out there. So I don't say this lightly. Penn State always has the best environment. And Ohio State might be a little lucky that it's not a night game, but it doesn't matter that it's a noon game. It's still going to be a crazy environment. They had a lot of pre-snap penalties against Oregon. And and when you lose a game by 1, those really add up. I think they had maybe 4 or 5 pre-snap penalties. They have to cut that down, especially against this very good Penn State team who's going to be out for blood. They get sick of hearing that, they haven't beat Ohio State the last 7 games. And Ohio State has a lot of pressure on them. You can just feel it. I mean, they came into this season saying we have to win every game. They already have not done that. And everything's on the table now. And a lot of pressure on Ohio State. They have to handle it far better than they did against Oregon.
Yeah, 0-6 against Ohio State and Michigan since 2021. I know they're sick of hearing that. Don't play Michigan this year, but do have a chance this Saturday to change that statistic. Let's hit some matchups here. Penn State offense versus Buckeye defense. Tyler, let's start with how do the Nittany Lions offense match up here against this Buckeyes defense?
Yeah, we've got a question mark at right tackle right now. It's worth noting. Anthony Donko missed much of the Wisconsin matchup. He's been a little on and off the field the last few weeks during conference play. He's been a really, really strong run blocker. If he's not able to go, we'll see a lot of Nolan Rucci, a Wisconsin transfer, who has held up pretty well, but I think there's a slight drop off there from Donko to Rucci, especially on the ground. But overall, I think the ground game is what I'm looking at for Penn State. I spent some time sorting through the stats from this 7-game losing streak. for Penn State in this series, and they have not had running backs collectively surpass 75 rushing yards in this series more than once. It happened in 2022 when Katron Allen and Nick Singleton were freshmen. We have not seen that. I mean, Barkley had less than 45 yards, less than 2.5 yards per carry back in 2017. He had Miles Sanders having fewer than 45 yards, less than 2.5 yards per carry in 2018. And then since then, it's been kind of a mix of guys who just haven't been able to find the right balance. And a lot of that has to do with Penn State's offensive line. It's progressed in a significant way over this 7-year sample size. They're competing at a different level now than they were in 2017 or even 2021. But Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, can they get the daylight? Can they manufacture things when there isn't daylight? Because to me, that has been a very, very missing ingredient for Penn State time and time again against the Buckeyes. And it's really put their quarterbacks in a precarious situation. That could be even more the case if they're dealing with the absence of their starter in Drew Aller.
I concur 100% with what Tyler said. This game will be one in the trenches. Ohio State's defense needs to contain this Penn State rushing attack. It's like the old adage, like, you're not going to stop them, you can only hope to contain them. If they can contain them, Ohio State will have a chance of winning this game. And this is a tremendous running attack with 2 excellent running backs. And now with Pribula at least probably playing a bigger role, I would have to think. He's an excellent running quarterback, and Ohio State has struggled against rushing quarterbacks this year that are far worse than Pribula as a rushing quarterback. Marshall's quarterback, for example. So Ohio State's defense has been good overall this year, but they had a shaky performance against Oregon. And really, Oregon's the only good offense they faced. And Oregon's a great offense. Ohio State's looked really good against bad offenses this year, or mediocre offenses. And Penn State is far from a mediocre offense. They're definitely in the good to great category. So can Ohio State contain this rushing attack? And then Penn State's going to take some shots deep, especially if they have Aller. But, it will come down to if Ohio State can, contain this rushing attack. And one more thing, how's Ohio State going to look at safety if Lathan Ransom doesn't play for the second straight week? Ohio State's saying he's going to practice this week. He's a 5th-year senior. He didn't play last week because of a foot injury. I think he'll probably sit this one out. They're being coy about it. And they'll probably go with true freshman Jalen McClain again. So that's one to keep an eye on. 5th-year senior Lathan Ransom might not play in this game.
That certainly hurts this Ohio State defense. On the other side of things, Ohio State offense versus Penn State defense. Dave, you mentioned how this game is going to be won and lost in the trenches. So how will that offensive line that's been struggling to stay healthy hold up against this really good Penn State defensive line?
Yeah, even if Ohio State was completely healthy on the O-line, this would be a major concern. And they lost their best offensive lineman, Josh Simmons, for the season in the Oregon game. And, Seth McLaughlin, the centers, also played well, but the left tackle Josh Simmons was playing really well. Some had him projected as a first-round pick. He's out for the year. So they put Zen Mihalski in, a 4th-year junior who really hasn't played much last week. He got abused by Nebraska. And Nebraska's got a good defensive line. It's not as good as Penn State's. There's no Abdul Carters on Nebraska's defensive line. So it's a major concern for Ohio State. Can they hold up at left tackle? They don't even know who the left tackle is going to be. When we spoke with Ryan Day on Tuesday of this week, he's being very coy about it. Chip Kelly as well. As you would expect, they're not going to tell Penn State exactly what they're going to do, just like Penn State's not going to tell Ohio State exactly what they're going to do at quarterback. There's a lot of gamesmanship going on. But it's a massive concern, Emily. There's just no doubt about it. Ohio State has to win the rushing battle to win this game. Feels like the Oregon game or any Ohio State-Michigan game or really any Ohio State-Penn State game. I think whoever wins the rushing battle is going to win this game. And if Ohio State can't, hold down the fort at left tackle, it's going to be a long day for them. If they can, then they have a good shot of winning this game.
Considering what Dave just laid out for the left tackle situation for Ohio State, I know Abdul Carter's licking his chops right now for the Nittany Lions. He has taken his game from an all-conference linebacker last year to really, I think he's in the All-American discussion at defensive end now. You've seen him projected as a top 10 draft pick for next spring, and he has really been heating up in conference action. The question here is opposite of him, fellow starting defensive end Dennis Sutton, who's really been a force in conference play, was limited last week. He ended up being out for the entire second half against Wisconsin. It appeared to be his groin. He's another guy that we're going to get a look at potentially on the practice field later on Wednesday, but he's probably going to be a question mark right up to kickoff. If he can't go, they've got a veteran named Amin Vanover who had 5 pressures on and really stepped up. They've got a true freshman they like a lot, an explosive kid named Max Granville who could step up. But I would say the defender to keep eyes on more than anyone in this matchup is safety Jalen Reed. He had a pick six for a touchdown last week on the road at Wisconsin. He had a late interception against USC. He leads this team in tackles. They line him up at the second level. He'll play back deep. He has been Mr. Do-It-All. I think he is building an All-American type case as well. So beyond the trenches, keep an eye on safety number 1, Jalen Reed.
Keeping an eye on both safeties for different reasons. Guys, we simulated this game 20 times on EA College Football 25, and Penn State, with a home field advantage, won it a cool 11 times. This one was very close. So for each team, let's start with the virtual victors. Tyler, what's the biggest key to pulling out a win in the real football game?
There's so many dynamics to the matchup, but I can't avoid focusing on the psychology of this game for Penn State. You're talking about a group of players who were, potentially in middle school the last time Penn State won this matchup. There have been waves of recruiting classes who've come to campus telling us we're going to be the ones that take this program to the Big Ten championship, get them past the Michigans and Ohio States of the world. They were never able to get over that hump. And right now, already sensing some blood in the water with where the Buckeyes are, knowing what a loss would mean for Ryan Day potentially, Penn State has a huge opportunity against in front of a massive group of top talented recruits to finally end this 7-game losing streak, put it in the past for them. I don't know if it matters as much this year because a one loss on the season wouldn't knock Penn State out of college football playoff contention. They might be able to host a playoff game down the road, but this would put them in the driver's seat to get to Indianapolis for the Big Ten championship game, something they haven't done since the last time they beat Ohio State back in 2016.
And the keys for Ohio State will start with the rushing attack. Whoever wins the rushing battle, I believe, will win this game. But beyond that, Ohio State has been very pedestrian on special teams this year. Can they win the special teams battle? Their punter has decent stats, Joe McGuire, but a lot of it has been kind of, punts that have been 30 yards that might roll for 20 yards. So overall, they've been very shaky on special teams. Their field goal kicker is very shaky, Jaden Fielding. He had a game where he kicked 3 kickoffs out of bounds. He had a field goal attempt last week that he basically shanked into the stands. They've been a little shaky on punt returns. I don't know what they're doing with their schemes there. So can Ohio State at least have a stalemate or perhaps win the special teams battle? But Emily, I think it's really going to come down to the rushing attack. Whoever wins the rushing battle, unless there's some crazy disparity in the turnover battle, if one team has like 3 turnovers, the other team doesn't have any. I think this is going to come down to the rushing battle. Who's going to have the most rushing yards? Whichever team that is going to win this game in Happy Valley.
Ohio State coming off a performance, a season low rushing yards with 64, so I'm sure that's being talked about in the locker room this week. Guys, thank you both so much for the great breakdowns. I'm so looking forward to this game and checking out more of your coverage from this game at Lions 24/7 for all things Penn State and bucknuts.com for everything Ohio State. Thank you both.